I said to everyone, who's the next big thing? And everyone was saying, Jackson Hastings, future Origin player, future Aussie Test star.
Jackson Hastings was touted as a future star of rugby league, but was labelled a problem child, cocky and arrogant, which led to teammate bust-up that caused him to be exiled from the sports elite competition, forcing him to reinvent himself on the other side of the world and then become the best player in the Northern Hemisphere. This is the Jackson Hastings story. Jackson Hastings was born in Wollongong, New South Wales in 1996 and stood out at the junior level. He represented New South Wales, the Australian schoolboys and the Kangaroos at youth level, a clear sign of potential coming through the ranks. By 2013, Hastings was playing for St George Illawarra's under-18s and facing a major decision about his professional future. Several clubs were circling. The Dragons wanted to keep him, while the Sydney Roosters, Newcastle Knights and North Queensland Cowboys all made offers for the teenager. Hastings was already being touted as a future state of origin and Australian Test star. Veteran NRL journalist Phil Rothfield described him as an extra special talent, praising his maturity, vision and competitiveness, traits he said Jackson shared with his father, Kevin. Kevin Hastings had been a star halfback for the Roosters during the 1970s and 80s. He was a three-time Dally M Halfback of the Year and was later named in the club's Team of the Century. But Jackson's relationship with his father was complicated. After his parents' marriage broke down, Kevin moved to the United States and Jackson grew up largely without him. At the time, he didn't fully grasp the impact that absence had on him. In August of 2013, Hastings made his choice. He signed with his boyhood club, the Sydney Roosters. He cited the club's clear pathway to first grade and the opportunity to learn from star halves Mitchell Pearce and James Maloney as key reasons. He also credited head coach Trent Robinson and the star players at the club to reason he was excited to be a Rooster. Roosters recruitment manager Peter O'Sullivan, widely regarded as one of the best talent spotters in the game, called Hastings a clear standout and said he was the best halfback he'd seen come through the junior system in years. At just 17 years old, he found himself training alongside stars like Anthony Minichiello, James Maloney, Mitchell Pearce and Sonny Bill Williams. Hastings was preparing for just his second game in reserve grade when he got a call from head coach Trent Robinson, asking him to come to his office. At first, Jackson feared the worst. He'd been spoken to before about his attitude, and he assumed this might be another warning. Instead, Robinson asked, "How would you like to play first grade this week?" Hastings was stunned. Named to debut in the final round of the regular season against the Roosters' rivals, the South Sydney Rabbitohs. A win would secure the minor premiership, and Hastings soaked it all in. He came off the bench in the second half and didn't have to wait long for his welcome to the league. Greg Inglis, one of the best players in the competition, ran straight over him. It was a brutal welcome to first grade, but the Roosters won the match and secured the minor premiership. In his debut game, Hastings was lifting a trophy alongside some of the modern greats. He kept his spot on the bench for the opening finals game against Penrith. It was a tight contest, decided by a last-minute Jamie Soward field goal that saw the Roosters fall just short. They got a second chance the following week against the Cowboys, but Hastings wasn't selected. He also missed the preliminary final, where South Sydney ended their season. Despite the disappointment of missing out on the grand final, 2014 was a breakthrough year. Hastings had started the season thinking he might not even play NRL as a teenager, and ended it with a debut, a trophy, and a clear goal for 2015, more time in first grade. Jackson Hastings continued his development in 2015, featuring in 17 games during a strong season for the Roosters. The club went on to claim back-to-back minor premierships, and Hastings enjoyed both breakthrough moments and valuable lessons in his second year. An injury to star halfback Mitchell Pearce opened the door for Hastings to see extended game time, including his first starts at halfback in the NRL. He wore the number 7 jersey on 6 occasions, stepping into one of the most demanding roles in the game. He scored his first NRL try in a win over the Canterbury Bulldogs.
Gonna get a start with Hastings, is it? Yeah!
In the finals, Hastings started in the Roosters' qualifying final loss to the Melbourne Storm, a side stacked with legends like Cameron Smith, Cooper Cronk and Billy Slater. Hastings later described the experience as a massive learning curve, facing some of the best players the game has ever seen. He kept his starting spot for the semi-final win over the Bulldogs, but was moved back to the bench for the preliminary final clash with the Brisbane Broncos. That match, played in front of 80,000 fans at Suncorp Stadium, was another surreal moment for Hastings, who was still only a teenager. Despite the season ending one game short of the grand final, 2015 had cemented Jackson Hastings as a rising talent. He'd shown he could compete at the top level and was steadily earning trust in one of the NRL's strongest sides. Jackson Hastings' start to life in the NRL had exceeded all expectations, and by 2016 he was set to become the Roosters' starting halfback. James Maloney had left the club and Mitchell Pearce was dealing with off-field issues, opening the door for Hastings to take control of the team. But things didn't go to plan for either Hastings or the Roosters. The side opened the season with 5 straight losses, including a 40-0 thrashing at the hands of the North Queensland Cowboys. As the starting number 7, much of the criticism fell on Hastings' shoulders. He later admitted he wasn't playing to his potential and took responsibility for the team's poor form, but there was a deeper issue. Hastings was unsure of the player he wanted to be. He was caught between trying to be a dominant on-field general and playing his natural game. The result was a safe, risk-averse style, simple passes, no spark, and it began to erode his confidence. This hesitation was noticed by others, including NRL legend Andrew Johns. Johns said Hastings was putting up a facade, which made him come across as arrogant, though in their personal interactions Johns only ever found him to be respectful. Off the field, things were even more difficult. He was grieving the loss of his friend and Cowboys under-20s player Regan Grieve, who committed suicide in January 2015. And in 2016, both of his nans passed away within a month of each other. Grieving, while trying to perform at an elite level, took a heavy toll. Hastings admits these personal losses affected his attitude, but from the outside, his struggles were misread as poor professionalism. He began to lose his drive, the joy of training. He'd burst onto the scene as a confident teenager in a squad full of champions, but now he didn't know where he fit in. He believed in his ability, but that self-assurance rubbed some teammates the wrong way. Hastings says he was bad at making friends, struggled to fit into the team dynamic, and didn't understand the value of strong relationships with teammates. Mentally, he was struggling, but didn't have the ability to speak up or ask for help. He wanted to be the tough kid who showed no weakness, but this pushed people further away. Behind the scenes, reported clashes with senior players, including co-captain Jake Friend, worsened the situation. Hastings admits now that he thought he knew it all as a teenager. That lack of humility, he says, cost him his dream and his place at his boyhood club. After leaving the Roosters, Jackson Hastings signed with the Manly Sea Eagles ahead of the 2017 season, but the move raised eyebrows. Manly already had Daly Cherry Evans locked in as their long-term number 7, with Blake Green also in the halves. Still, the departure of Matt Parcell left an opening for a bench utility role, and Manly highlighted Hastings' versatility as a key factor in their decision to sign him. Some believed that leaving his father's old club might lift a weight off his shoulders and help him reset his career, but 2017 didn't go to plan. Hastings spent most of the year in reserve grade, playing for Blacktown Workers, and made just 9 NRL appearances for Manly. He did, however, form a strong bond with Sea Eagles welfare officer Quentin Ponga. Hastings described Ponga, who has since passed away, as someone he could trust and confide in more than anyone else in the game. Still, the same issues persisted. Hastings struggled to connect with his teammates. He recalls others walking on eggshells around him, unsure why he always kept to himself. He still hadn't bridged the gap to develop off-the-field connections. Heading into 2018, Hastings was in the best shape of his life. He trained through Christmas for the first time, was mentally refreshed and ready to fight for his spot. But during pre-season, when he wasn't included in key ball playing drills, the writing was on the wall. He knew he'd be starting the year in reserve grade, but committed to giving everything to earn a recall. He got his chance in round 2, coming off the bench in a 54-0 win over the Eels. He scored a try the following week against the Rabbitohs and continued to fill a utility role until round 5, but in round 6 he was dropped. The official line was an Achilles injury, but the truth soon came out. It was a disciplinary issue. After a loss in against the Titans, the Manly players were instructed not to leave the hotel. Hastings was among a group who ignored the order, went out to a club and returned late, drunk. A verbal altercation followed between Hastings and Captain Cherry Evans. DCE later downplayed it as a lover's tiff, and the two shook hands the next day and their issues were squashed, but the damage was done. While others received fines, Hastings was dropped to reserve grade and he never played first grade for Manly again. Effectively exiled, Hastings was told he was free to leave the club, but with his reputation badly damaged, no NRL side was willing to sign him. He was now considered one of the most unpopular players in rugby league. For 20 straight days he was front page news. The media followed him relentlessly. He received death threats. Even previous minor training ground arguments, normal in any competitive environment, were turned into headlines to diminish his character. In an interview with the Sunday Telegraph, Hastings opened up. He admitted to seeing a psychologist and said, "It's about trying to make myself a better bloke to fit into a team environment." He took responsibility, saying, "We wouldn't even be sitting here talking about it if I just didn't break curfew. It just pisses me off that I made such a dumb decision." He also denied the rumours of a physical fight with Cherry Evans, also putting the blame solely on himself and his actions. Former coach Trent Robinson publicly defended him, saying Hastings was never a bad person at the Roosters, just someone who struggled to fit in with the playing group. Hastings found some perspective during his time with Blacktown Workers. He was travelling long distances to play reserve grade and began to appreciate what he had. Seeing teammates teammates show up with cuts and bruises from working day jobs made him realise he wasn't in a position to be bitter. In fact, he began to love his time at Blacktown. But the writing was on the wall. His agent was blunt about his future in the professional game. If he didn't go to England, he might as well get a 9-to-5 job. At 22 years old, Jackson Hastings took a leap of faith, signing a short-term deal with Super League side Salford Red Devils. On the flight over to England, Hastings jotted down a list of personal goals in his phone. At the top, don't fall out with anyone. The rest followed: get help, play good rugby, be a good teammate. It was clear this move wasn't just about reviving his career, it was about rebuilding himself. And once he landed, something shifted. His mindset changed. He was focused, ready, and open to a fresh start. He stepped off the plane, met with club staff, and immediately felt welcomed. He credits CEO Ian Blease and head coach Ian Watson for helping him settle quickly. Hastings made an immediate impact. He scored a try on debut against Leeds Rhinos and led Salford into the crucial qualifiers, a post-season round robin where a top 3 finish was needed to secure Super League status. Salford started strong with wins over Hull, KR and Widnes, and Hastings was electric, scoring twice in a 62-4 demolition of Halifax. He added another try against the Toronto Wolfpack in a vital win, but a red card for a reckless tackle saw him suspended for the next 2 matches. Without him, Salford lost both games. But Hastings returned in the final must-win clash against Toulouse. Once again, he delivered, scoring a try in a decisive victory that sealed Salford's place in Super League for the following season. The fans embraced him almost instantly. Chants of his name rang out from the terraces, a symbol of how quickly he had gone from a discarded talent to a cult hero. His performances caught the eye of the league. The Wigan Warriors offered him a 3-year deal for 2019, but Hastings wasn't ready to walk away. Salford had taken a chance on him when no one else would. Out of loyalty, he turned down Wigan's offer and signed a 1-year extension with the Red Devils. In just a few months, Jackson Hastings had done what many thought impossible. He'd found stability, rediscovered his love for the game. Heading into 2019, Salford were tipped by many to be fighting relegation, but inside the dressing room, the mindset was different. Before round 1, co-captains Lee Mossop and Mark Flanagan addressed the squad bluntly. If you don't believe we can achieve something this season, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Salford started strong with big wins over Huddersfield and London, but a heavy round 3 defeat to Leeds brought them back to earth, and they went on to lose 5 of their next 7 games. Then Hastings says something clicked. One training session shifted the energy, and from that moment their season exploded. They thrashed Catalans 46-0 in France, claimed their first away win over Leeds in 50 years, and went on a blistering 8-game win streak to close out a historic regular season. Against all odds, Salford finished 3rd, their highest ever Super League finish, and a stunning feat for one of the league's lowest spending teams. And leading them was Jackson Hastings. He was outstanding. 36 try assists, 10 tries, and a season of consistent brilliance that saw him win the Man of Steel award. He'd started the year as a 33-1 outsider, behind stars like Blake Austin, Darryl Clark and George Williams, but ended it as the best player in the league. His loyalty to Salford had paid off, and Salford's gamble on a so-called NRL bad boy had proven to be one of the best signings in club history. Hastings had grown into a superb teammate, thriving in a spine that clicked perfectly. Ian Watson had built a system around his strengths, a smart kicking game, sharp ball playing and vision in attack. Hastings was no longer just a talent, he was the heartbeat of a team. Now came the playoffs. Salford faced the Wigan Warriors in the qualifying final and lost narrowly, but the squad left confident they could beat them if they met again. Next came Castleford in the qualifying semi-final, and Salford blew them away, winning 22-0. Hastings scored a try and set up another meeting with Wigan, this time in a preliminary final, with the trip to Old Trafford on the line. Salford brought 6,000 fans to the DW Stadium. Behind the scenes, CEO Ian Blease had flown Hastings' mother and sister over from Australia as a surprise. During the warm-up, Hastings spotted his mum, and he turned to a teammate and said, "We won't lose tonight." And he was right. Salford produced a sensational performance, beating Wigan 28-4 in one of the greatest nights in the club's modern history. They were going to the grand final. It was a fairy tale. And for Hastings, it would be his final game for Salford. Back in July, it had been announced he would be joining Wigan for the 2020 season. He admitted it was one of the hardest decisions of his life, but he felt he needed to challenge himself at a club with title expectations and constant pressure. Unlike his messy exits from the Roosters and Sea Eagles, Hastings was now leaving on good terms, with respect and gratitude on both sides. Salford's 2019 campaign had been driven by a siege mentality, a group that no one believed in, determined to prove everyone wrong. That spirit remained as they stepped onto the biggest stage in British Rugby League. They gave everything in the grand final, but up against a generational St Helens side, the fairy tale ended one step short. Salford were beat, but their journey and Hastings' redemption was a legendary tale. Jackson Hastings arrived at Salford when no one else would take a chance on him, and left as the Super League's best player. He turned his career and life around. He often speaks about the influence of his late grandmother, a proud English woman, and in 2019 he earned selection for the Great Britain Lions on their comeback tour, lining up alongside legends like James Graham, a player Hastings had long admired. When he got the call up, he says he was numb. He cried. Hastings knew that if his nan was still here, she'd have been the first person in the stands, and dedicated that moment for her. After Salford, he joined Wigan and spent 2 seasons with the Warriors, winning the League Leaders' Shield in 2020. And falling just short of grand final glory in dramatic fashion. In 2021, he was named the Warriors Player of the Year, and then the NRL came calling. Hastings had found peace with life in the UK, but knew deep down he'd regret not giving the NRL another crack. After 4 seasons in Super League, he returned to Australia to sign with the West's Tigers. His UK stint had been a remarkable redemption arc, a misunderstood player who in 2024 revealed that he had been clinically diagnosed with low-grade depression, OCD, and anxiety. Mental health struggles that had affected him as far back as age 14. He admits that building relationships has never come easy, and at times he didn't help himself, but he credits his partner, who he met in Manchester while playing for Salford, with helping him seek support and begin to heal. Hastings' return to the NRL has brought its ups and downs, flashes of brilliance with questions over his future, and now speculation he may even return to Super League. But whatever lies ahead, his story is one that resonates. And Hastings' story is one worth telling, just like Bevan French, who had his own rise and fall in the NRL and went on to reinvent himself in the Super League. And you can watch his rise, fall and rise again on the channel.